Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always found comfort in video games. Being on the autism spectrum, they've given me a way to connect with others without the pressure of face-to-face interaction. I started gaming when I was 6, and over the years, I've become quite knowledgeable about the industry, from development studios to market trends. Now, at 20, I work from home as a data analyst, which gives me plenty of time to keep up with gaming news. My local game store has become something of a sanctuary. I visit at least once a week, usually during quiet hours when there aren't many customers. The store clerk always greets me with a friendly wave, and I appreciate that he never pushes me to make small talk. That one day started like any other. I was feeling unusually confident, maybe because I'd just finished a challenging project at work, or perhaps because the store was peaceful and familiar. I was browsing through the latest gaming magazines when a mother and her young son walked in. The boy was wearing a birthday boy badge, and his eyes lit up at the sight of all the games. The mother sweetly asked her son which one he wanted to pick. The boy kept looking back and forth between the Xbox and PlayStation sections. Both consoles were displayed prominently in separate aisles, with a rotating magazine rack between them. He told her he was torn between them, saying he liked PlayStation but thought the Xbox looked cool too. Seeing his genuine excitement and indecision, I decided to share some industry knowledge that might help them make an informed choice. I suggested Xbox, explaining that the PlayStation subscription games weren't as good, and Xbox had been buying up good game developers, so they would get more better quality games. The mother asked me what I meant by that, looking confused. I tried to explain using an analogy about stores, saying that if peacocks bought all the local clothing stores, the only place you would be able to get clothes would be peacocks. She responded rudely, saying I could have just said they were going out of business. Her tone was harsh, but I was used to people misunderstanding my explanations. She then declared to her son that they were getting the Xbox. I tried to intervene, telling her she should let him choose and that I was only informing them about potential future developments. She snapped back, refusing to waste £500 on a console that she thought would be worthless soon. I stood my ground, explaining that I only wanted to help her son, not take away his choice. That's when she really lost it, screaming about how dare I speak to a customer like this. Her voice echoed through the store, causing me to flinch. The store clerk finally noticed the commotion and came over to ask if there was a problem. The mother demanded that I be fired, claiming I had spoken to her rudely. The store clerk defended me, saying he doubted that since I barely spoke, and when I did, I was super polite. He also pointed out that I didn't even work there. She seemed shocked by this revelation and demanded to know why I would help them if I didn't work there. I tried to explain that I just liked people knowing what they were buying beforehand, but she cut me off, accusing me of trying to get her card details. By this point, she was screaming and her son had backed away, clearly embarrassed and frightened. The store clerk repeatedly asked her to leave, but she refused, making wild accusations about me trying to steal from them. When he said he was calling the police, she encouraged him to do so, still insisting that I was trying to scam them. When the police arrived, they found her blocking the store entrance, still shouting about identity theft and scams. They tried to reason with her, but she became more aggressive, eventually forcing them to use their taser when she attempted to grab one of the officers. When they led her away in handcuffs, her husband arrived. He'd been parking the car and missed the entire incident. The look of shock on his face when he saw his wife being placed in a police car was almost pitiful. The boy's father took me aside while the police were taking statements. He apologized profusely, explaining that she'd been under a lot of stress lately, though he admitted that wasn't an excuse. He pleaded with me not to press charges, reminding me it was his son's birthday. I assured him I wouldn't, expressing hope that she would get the help she needed. The father ended up buying both consoles for his son, probably out of guilt. When they were leaving, the boy thanked me for trying to help and apologized for his mom's behavior. I still visit the game store, but now the store clerk keeps a closer eye on customer interactions. He even installed security cameras after the incident. I haven't stopped helping people entirely. I just do it through online gaming forums now, where there's less chance of getting falsely accused of identity theft. Backstory: I've recently, as in 8 months ago, been diagnosed with agoraphobia. So basically, I constantly try to avoid anything that could lead to panic or embarrassment. So whenever I go out, I try to stay close to someone I trust, or if I can't, I try to stay close to any and all exit doors or windows. This is from my personal experience, and this does not apply to everyone with the condition. Please understand that. And I think it's extremely important to note that I am a selective mute in some situations, but in others, I can just barely speak. One day, a few months ago, I was at a store with my best friend, and probably the only man I trust. Us both being artists, we were looking for an array of paints and supplies, and he told me that he needed to go to the restroom and to wait for him here because it was not only close to an exit, but it was also close to the bathroom. I agreed, and he left to do his business, but while I was scanning the shelves for a certain product, I heard the doorbell chime, and in comes our favorite person, Karen, who was followed by a younger girl with natural bright red hair and blue eyes. Karen said something quickly to her kid, and then they both parted ways. The nice kid began to walk in the direction of my aisle, and I started to panic a little. When she finally reached it, she walked next to me and started to look for something. After about 40 seconds of looking, she politely asked me about the location of a specific paint. Being a regular at the store, I knew exactly where it was, but in that situation, I could barely speak, let alone look at her. She noticed my anxious state and reassured me to take my time, giving me a warm smile. After about 40 whole seconds of stuttering and slurring, I managed to explain that it was in the next aisle over. She thanked me and continued with her shopping. My friend had just returned from the bathroom and noticed me talking to the nice kid. He asked about the interaction and checked if I was okay. After I explained everything, we both calmed down. When we continued shopping, we ended up near Karen. She noticed us and approached, addressing my friend first before rudely clarifying she wanted to speak to me instead. When I nervously acknowledged her, she demanded to know why I had been speaking to her daughter. I tried explaining about giving directions, but she immediately cut me off, accusing me of flirting instead. I realized then that my red face and difficulty speaking must have given her the wrong impression. I attempted to explain that it was harmless, but Karen became more aggressive, loudly declaring she didn't want some weirdo talking to her daughter. Just as I was about to break down, my friend grabbed my arm and intervened. He tried explaining about my anxiety and stutter, but Karen refused to believe him. Their exchange was interrupted by the nice kid's arrival, who asked what was happening. Karen told her daughter about the supposed flirting, but the nice kid tried defending me, explaining that I had only been helping her. Karen dismissed this explanation too, stepping closer to me and jabbing her finger into my chest while making threats. My friend pulled me away and confronted Karen about her behavior. Their argument escalated until security arrived. Karen immediately accused my friend of harassment and claimed I had inappropriately touched her daughter. While being removed in handcuffs, she shouted threats at me. The nice kid apologized for her mother's behavior, but I was already deep in a panic attack. Though I initially didn't want to press charges, my friend convinced me it was necessary, and we ultimately decided to sue Karen. In a post on a different sub, I mentioned that I took a hiatus from the live entertainment industry for a bit during my pursuit of a BA. One summer during this time, I found a job at a chain bookstore. In this case, it was a larger branch, which opened into the mall it was built off of. This is relevant as the branch had a rule. Once clocked in, employees were not allowed to go through the mall entrance. This was in place due to some people window shopping during break and not making it back on time, keeping others waiting on them. This is extremely relevant, I promise. Another thing to note, I sometimes have issues with my bladder due to a side effect of a medication I was on long term, which can sometimes trigger painful spasms. or worse. So, one day, I'm working in the cafe as usual, and I start to feel it, the telltale cramp of impending doom. Between just hypergirl bladder and the cramp, I knew it was urgent. A customer approached the cash register and began to order. I politely interrupted them, explaining I needed to leave urgently and would get my manager to help them instead. Sadly, this too will be relevant later. I leave the cafe at a sprint, headed for the ladies' room, only to find the entire bathroom locked with a "closed for maintenance sorry" sign on the door. I called the GM for the store, asking what I should do. Thankfully, he was nearby and came to unlock it. When he was fumbling for the key, he explained what had happened. Someone had smeared poop, blood, and possibly urine all over the bathroom, like on every surface, then threw the contents of the sanitary bins everywhere. A disgruntled customer, he said. Likely a rip-and buyer. Someone who tears a book and expects a discount for damaged goods. This isn't the Karen we're dealing with, though. He let me in, warning me about the wet floor, but explaining that as an employee, I'd be covered by workers' comp if I got hurt, unlike a customer who could potentially sue. Plus, I didn't have a choice due to policy. Long set up short, I get out of the bathroom after finding sweet relief. As I'm walking out, I hear a banging. Someone is trying to force the door open. I open the door and start to walk out, when a Karen tries pushing past me, demanding to know why the door was locked. I was confused, like, "Lady, there's a big sign that says, 'Closed for maintenance,' in 20-point font, bold text." I started apologizing and trying to close the door, seeing potential danger. When I attempted to explain why it was closed, the woman cut me off and started berating me. She angrily demanded to know how people with children were supposed to use the restroom if it was locked. I suggested the nearby alternatives, the restaurant next door or food court bathrooms, and apologized again before heading to the back room. My manager had told me to start my break while I was out of the cafe. The back room has a code lock door with a sign saying, "Employees only, no trespassing." I thought I had a chance to escape this woman's wrath and hide for a second. She followed me the whole way from the bathroom, yelling incoherently while dragging her 3-year-old granddaughter along. Before the door could shut, she pushed her way into the back room. I let her follow me, clocked out, squeezed past her, and slipped into the adjoining break room. From there, I called my GM again. The woman was screaming so loudly in the break room that he could barely hear me on the phone. He arrived quickly, and when she started accusing me of deliberately making her child suffer, he held up his hand to silence her. Amazingly, it worked. She fell into angry sputtering before going quiet. My manager Manny explained the situation about the power washing, liability issues, and suggested the food court bathroom as an alternative. He even offered to hold her unpurchased items until she returned. The Karen refused his explanation, demanding the bathroom be opened immediately while stamping her foot and snapping her fingers. Meanwhile, her 3-year-old granddaughter sensibly suggested they follow Manny's advice and go to the other bathroom. The grandmother tried using her grandchild's needs against us, then suddenly accused us of discrimination, using a racial slur and mentioning her race. When Manny identified himself for her threatened corporate complaint, she continued with racial accusations and referenced a previous incident involving spilled coffee. Manny began calling mall security, which caused the woman to become even more agitated. She dragged her granddaughter into the men's room, yelling at the men in line to move. Afterwards, she returned to confront Manny, claiming we had put her at risk of assault, before storming out through the mall entrance. Manny muttered a dismissive comment about her desperation level as he finished calling security. Later, the Karen made one final appearance, being escorted by mall security, which ended with her in handcuffs after she tried to assault them. What made it even more ironic was that Manny had been planning to offer her a significant discount for the inconvenience before her behavior escalated the situation. I'm a middle-aged woman with 2 adult children, and Christmas has been complicated for me since I was 13. My mother was what you'd call a Christmas zealot. She adopted me and my 2 sisters when we were young. And while that should have been a blessing, the holiday season turned into a 3-month marathon of exhaustion and emotional manipulation. Starting November 1st every year, our house transformed into what my mother called a Christmas wonderland. In reality, it was more like a festive prison. She'd have us hanging lights, setting up displays, and rearranging decorations countless times because they weren't perfect enough. When December hit, the real nightmare began. Every evening, we'd be forced to stand outside greeting strangers who came to see our display, handing out candy canes with frozen smiles on our faces. Even after I had my own children, it didn't stop. She roped them into the tradition too. Christmas Eve meant mandatory light viewing tours around town, which my kids tolerated until they hit their preteens. But my mother never got the hint. Year after year, the cycle continued, until this July when she passed away, suddenly. Today at our office end-of-year luncheon, I was sitting with my usual crowd, people who knew my story and respected my boundaries. We were having a pleasant conversation about holiday plans when the office busybody decided to join our table. When asked about my plans, I quietly mentioned my intention to spend the day at home with my cat and a good book. The busybody immediately protested, insisting that I couldn't possibly spend Christmas alone. I explained that my kids were fine with the arrangement and had made their own plans, but she wouldn't let it go. She pressed on about my parents, expressing shock that they would be heartbroken. I had to explain that my father and both grandfathers were completely understanding of my choice not to visit. Still, she persisted, lecturing me about the true meaning of Christmas and trying to guilt me about my children. I could feel my chest tightening as the familiar panic started creeping in. My co-workers were shooting concerned looks my way, but the busybody kept pushing. In desperation, I told her that I was finally getting what I'd wanted for 30 years. She scoffed, claiming that nobody could want the same thing for that long. When I insisted that I had indeed wanted the same thing every year since 1994, she demanded to know what could possibly be so important. That's when I finally snapped and told her all I wanted was to be left the hell alone. The busybody's face turned red, then white, then red again. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Just then, our department head, who had been sitting at the next table and apparently heard everything, came to my rescue. She approached our table and reminded the busybody about the office's strict policy on respecting personal boundaries, then suggested she might be more comfortable at an empty table in the corner. The busybody gathered her plate and scurried away, leaving blessed silence in her wake. As the dessert arrived, my co-workers smoothly transitioned the conversation to a heated debate about the best holiday movies, carefully avoiding any mention of Christmas classics. The next morning, there was a company-wide email about respecting personal boundaries and mental health during the holiday season. I didn't ask who sent it, but I noticed the busybody couldn't look me in the eye for the rest of the week. Sometimes, the best Christmas gift really is silence. But the story doesn't end there. Word of the incident spread through the office like wildfire, and something unexpected happened. Over the next few days, several colleagues quietly approached me to share their own struggles with holiday expectations and family pressure. One co-worker even confided that she'd been forcing herself to host elaborate Christmas parties for years, despite her severe anxiety because she thought that's what everyone expected of her. The following week, our department organized an optional stress-free holiday gathering where people could come and go as they pleased, with no pressure to participate in holiday activities. The busybody tried to protest this break from tradition, but was quickly shut down by HR. I heard she was required to attend a sensitivity training session before the year's end. I'm now looking forward to my quiet Christmas more than ever. My kids are coming over the day after for a casual lunch. Their idea, not mine. We agreed to call it just lunch, nothing more. No decorations, no pressure, no expectations. Just family being together because we want to be, not because some holiday demands it. And my cat, she's already picked out her favorite spot on my lap for our Christmas reading session. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.